It is my honor now to be able to introduce our moderator for tonight's debate, Dr. Jeffrey Jarman, who is director of the Elliott School of Communications at Wichita State University. From 1996 to 2018, Jeff served as the director of debate at WSU. Jeff has his bachelor's degree in political science from Southwest Missouri State University, where he won the Cross-Examination Debate Association's national championship in 1992, defeating Florida State in the championship debate. Yeah. His master's and doctorate degrees are in communication studies from the University of Kansas. And ladies, he is our kind of guy. He believes in shared sacrifice. When his wife, Jan, got pregnant with their first child and was unable to drink, Jeff gave up alcohol as well, refusing to drink as long as his wife couldn't. And I have it on good authority that that was no small sacrifice. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jeff Jarman.
Thank you. So hopefully everybody can hear me at this level. Yes? Good. So my name is Brian McClendon, nickname of BAM, which I got through many years of having an email address of BAM. But I'll first talk about what is the Secretary of State's job. You might think the Secretary of State is responsible for filing new laws that cause unconstitutional opposition and going into court and losing to the ACLU 5 times. You might think that the Secretary of State's job is to make it harder to vote, to put obstacles in the way, and in some cases to actively work on voter suppression. You might think the Secretary of State's job is to drive around in a Jeep with a 50mm cannon in back. But it's not. The job is manyfold, and I'll talk through several of them right now. Most importantly, he's the Chief Election Officer. He's responsible for the voter database, voter registration, and reporting the results throughout the state, pulling up from all of the county clerks who are doing the real work and calculating and finishing for the canvass. He is also responsible for business registration in the state of Kansas. Business licensing is within the purview. The Secretary of State is responsible for the website that publishes all of the state's information and is a big part of transparency in the state. And we have serious problems with transparency right now. Also, the Secretary of State is responsible for overseeing the biggest technology contract in the state. Our current Secretary of State has not shown up to a single meeting in 7.5 years on that last task. So, why am I qualified? I grew up in Lawrence and went to KU. I got an engineering degree there and got to work in what I really had thought I was going to be my career, which was building and designing graphic supercomputers. However, I then joined a startup called Keyhole. And over a several-year period, we built some software that was acquired by Google in 2004. And that software turned into Google Earth. And I led the teams that built Google Maps, Google Earth, Street View, Google Local Search, and pretty much anything with a map, in some cases anything with a picture, for 10 years at Google. I learned a large amount about leadership and technology and working with people and enabling tools that could be used by billions of people. You know, if you remember the first version of Google Maps, it wasn't that great, but it got better over time and it got more and more accurate over time. And, you know, this still has a ways to go, but I think, you know, it's the best that it can be right now. I then joined Uber and worked for Uber for 2 years. I built their Maps team. I led their self-driving effort for a year, and I led their business platform and machine learning group for a year. However, I finally got to come home to Lawrence, and now I'm a research professor at the University of Kansas, and I help students and professors see how their research intersects with the industry at large because of my background. But the main thing I've been doing, obviously, is running for Secretary of State, but more importantly, I also helped start ksvotes.org. And many people have contributed to that, but I helped, you know, pick the task and get the people to develop the software and work through all of the issues that we could to make it as easy to use as possible. Because the goal we had was to try to make voter registration easy to use. It was the primary thing I learned coming here, is that voter registration was messed up. It needed work. So KS Votes allows you to register on your mobile phone. It's not an app, it's just a website, but it feels like an app. And in 3 minutes, you can fill out the form, you can sign it with your finger, and when you hit submit, it emails it to the county clerk. No paper required, and you're registered to vote. We have registered over 8,000 people so far in Kansas. And in July, it was used by 15% of all voter registration in the state went through this new website. So the big news as of today is that we've launched version 2.0, which has Spanish language, but more importantly, it has advanced ballot. So you're now able to request an advanced ballot in 3 minutes on your phone, no stamp, no paper. You email it to the county clerk, and they will then, at the right time, mail you your advance ballot. And I think that has the opportunity to change how Kansas interacts with its election system. Because one of the biggest problems I have with voting is that when you walk into the voting booth, you have a few minutes. And the mistake many people make is to run down the party line. If we had time at home on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon to sit down with a ballot, sit down with a website or a booklet or an information that could read about all of the candidates and all of the issues, we could choose the right candidate and pick people over party. Because right now, a very small number of people choose who we get to vote for in the fall. Primary election turnout was 27%. It was amazing, better than expected. 27%? Are you kidding me? We need to do a lot better. Midterm, 52% would be considered, a really good turnout. Only 52% of eligible voters are going to vote in this election? No, we need to get it much, much higher so that when we elect our next governor, our next Secretary of State, and all of our House representatives, that we have as many Kansans as possible making that decision. So my administration as Secretary of State would be to increase voter registration, voter participation, and give more opportunities to make smarter decisions about who we vote for. So. I would also work on transparency. The current website is not searchable. I think I can help with that. But there's a lot more that it needs to do. There's a lot of information that is not currently published because legislation doesn't require it. We need to have more legislation passed to force the state to describe what's going on inside the state, because the best thing we can do as citizens is watch. A observed state is a better state. We can check what they're doing. We can make sure that the money is spent the way we intended it and not on some weird black box or $17 million in computers in a basement that have never been unwrapped. That happened. So transparency is critical. Finally, business registration. The front door for business in the state is the business registration side of Secretary of State. We have, a lot of new companies come into the state, sometimes from out of state, sometimes an entrepreneur starting. The challenge is most new businesses fail. And all new jobs come from these new businesses. So the more new businesses we have, the more new jobs. The net job growth from all the existing companies we have is 0. Big companies grow, big companies die. That washes away. If we don't have new companies in Kansas, we're not going to have jobs for our children. We're not going to have job growth that's going to grow the GDP of Kansas and make us successful. So if the Secretary of State could provide a better interface to introduce entrepreneurs to the business process, perhaps we can have fewer of them fail and increase and make more jobs. So I'll make the argument that my background as a technologist and working throughout my career on making things easier to use, more efficient, and work at scale is something that Kansas could use more of. And my website is bamforkansas.com, B-A-M, number 4, kansas.com. And I need your votes. I need everybody in here to consider voting for me at least. If you like it, tell your friends, because we need everybody to get out to vote this year. And I know you're by definition politically active. A lot of your friends are not, and we need to get them out to vote. So let's motivate them to come out to vote and increase voter participation in Kansas so we have better candidates and better election systems, and we have a better Kansas for all of our futures. Thank you very much.
Okay. Considering low voter turnout, explain your strategies to encourage more people to participate in the voting process in Kansas.
So I think that I covered a little bit of that, but I'll go into more detail. So obviously, if we can get more advance ballot requests to occur, that gives more people the opportunity to vote over a 3-week period prior to the election. And honestly, that's the kind of time you need. The Tuesday during the window or even on the county courthouse for a few days before, that's just not enough time. So if we can get more advance ballots, by a significant fraction. Right now it's on the order of 200,000 in a midterm election, hopefully. I think we can do better. I think we can get 250 or 300,000 this time, and we should have 400,000 or 500,000 in the future. And I would promote advanced ballot. You know, some counties promote it right now, some do not. But as Secretary of State, I would motivate all the counties to make the effort to do this because it can save money. Right now, poll workers are expensive. Polling locations are expensive. And if we can reduce the number of people that need to vote on Tuesday, we can save the counties money.
Mr. McClendon, if I could follow up, you were talking about the voter turnout. You said 27% is too low, 52% is too low.
Mhm.
What's your aspiration? Where should we be?
My aspiration would be, you know, somewhere between 80 and 100%. I will have to say that no state at this moment in the United States is there, but there are states that are well above us. And so my real aspiration is, because I'm competitive, we should be in the top 5 in the country in voter participation. And that would be my goal in my administration.
Next question,
The state of Kansas is currently appealing a court decision that ruled the state's voter registration laws unconstitutional. I believe that'd be one of the 0 for 5 you were referenced earlier. Should the state continue to appeal that verdict in the case? And do you think Kansans should be required to prove citizenship for new voter registration?
So I do not think that that lawsuit defense should be continued. I would stop it. I think it's very expensive and it's a loser case. And we saw that. I actually went to the courthouse for the Kansas City district appeal. And so what I would do, the question is, do I think that a birth certificate should be required? I think we should be required to be citizens to vote. I absolutely do. I do not think you should require to show your birth certificate to prove that. There are other systems that we can build to verify citizenship and check for it, and we should not put that onus on the citizen, because right now we have 35,000 Kansans who registered to vote, were unable to provide their birth certificate through multiple iterations, and for several years did not get to vote. And only this year are they able to vote. And that's 35,000 people, you know, in Kansas who have not voted for 3 years. That is terrible. That's a deep disenfranchisement, and I think we should do much better.
One follow-up on that. You said there are other systems in place that would help, so citizens wouldn't have to provide their birth certificate. Can you talk about some of those?
I believe that, you know, for example, in Kansas, Kansas has a record of every birth certificate. So if you're a native Kansan, you'll show up as having been born in Kansas, and you don't actually have to provide your birth certificate. Well, there are 49 other states and 7 other territories and districts that we should communicate with to check with them to see if somebody's a citizen. And we should be building the system to do the check. It's a software problem that should not be a burden on each of the voters. Because honestly, voting is a right. Voting is a right, and all of the hurdles that you put in place slow it down and take people out of the picture. And there's no need to do that. We can do much better building software and systems to do it without burdening the voter.
Regarding election security, what problems exist related to illegal voting in Kansas? And are security measures sufficient?
So illegal voting as in tampering with the system, or illegal voting as in?
Any of it, correct?
That's it. So there are many different aspects to this. So the one that our current Secretary of State has been focused on has been double voting. He seems to have convicted 8 people of doing that. He's very interested in illegal immigrant voting, and he's convicted 0 people of doing that. There was one legal immigrant who registered to vote and voted, and he convicted him. And that person has lost their path to citizenship and was convicted of a felony. That's it. In 7.5 years, somebody who cares deeply about illegal immigrants voting and tells the president that there's 3 million to 5 million of them was unable to find one. So other issues that are much more important to the security of our election are attacks from the outside. We know that Russia is attacking our systems. They attacked 21 states. They broke into 7. They may have affected a voter database in North Carolina. This is just the beginning. They're going to continue to attack, and we should be preparing to defend. And the current HAVA money of $388 million was allocated, and Kansas was offered $4 million to spend. We have not put in our plan to spend it. We are the only state in the country that has not followed through on this act. You know, how can this be? We need to get that money, and we also need to work hard to solve some of these problems on the technology side. We need to make our election systems in the Secretary of State's office more secure. We need to help county clerks with their systems. And we also need to make sure that the voting machines that are out there have a paper trail throughout the state. So the HAVA money was part of the reaction to 2000. So the hanging chads of that election led to allocation of a significant amount of money over many years that was given to the states to improve their systems. This is debatably the last batch of that money, and each of the states need to put forth a proposal of how they would spend it, and they would be allocated something, if you figure it out, it's approximately the percent of your population in the country. And so Kansas is about 1%, we got about 1% of the money. And what we should be spending it on is educating our election officials, our poll workers, our county clerks and all of their assistants and deputies about how to stay secure in a situation where bad actors are attempting to get their login credentials and break in to our election and voter database. Keeping our voter database secure so the Kansan information isn't leaked or used for attacks. And we have yet to talk about crosscheck, but I imagine you're about to ask me about that. So I'll wait for that question.
I'm gonna make you wait on. Should I go crosscheck them? All right, we'll go crosscheck. The Interstate Voter Registration Crosscheck software program is run out of the Kansas Secretary of State's office. Do you think Kansas should participate in crosscheck? And if elected, will your office continue to run the program nationally?
Right, so I think, you know, we have to participate as long as we're running it. I'm certainly not going to not participate if we don't run it. I think the challenge is that it is implemented really badly. The problems it has is it creates a lot of false positives, which make the results of what it's trying to do almost useless or useless. And the goal of crosscheck is not terrible. The goal of crosscheck is that our voter database in Kansas has 100,000 to 200,000 people in it who have left the state, and we don't know who they are. And so the attempt is, let's find if that person has moved to Missouri or Nebraska or any of the other 26 states that use it, and find them exactly, and if they've registered and voted over there after registering here, let's try and contact them here, make sure they've moved, and then take them off the rolls. In theory, it's not a bad thing because it saves the state money. But the execution has been so terrible that the reports that we get of these duplicates tends to be 10 to 20 times longer than the actual number of duplicates that are found. So people, to find the 100 to 200,000 Kansas, we get 1 million to 2 million out of it. And that makes no sense. So if we either implement it better or we toss it and switch to the system that 23 other states use called ERIC, the Electronic Records Information Center, it is a pay-for system. It costs a little bit of money, but honestly it costs far less than Kansas is spending to implement crosscheck and far less than a single lawyer to just read the contract and make sure we're getting our money's worth. So
Yeah.
I would recommend switching to ERIC unless we can find a much better and more efficient way to implement crosscheck.
Sure. Still on election security, should Kansas change to a system of all paper ballots?
Change to? So we should have a paper trail for every machine in the state or every vote in the state. So some people do just use paper ballots and scan it in, and that's fine because the scanned ballot is the paper record. Sedgwick County just bought the ES&S systems that you might have read some things about. They bought it 2 years ago, and they bought a system that basically requires you to print out your result. The voter can look at it and then scan it in, and that printout is your vote, and you can read it and verify that's what you meant. Put that in. That's great. Separate print and scan. Johnson County bought very similar machines, but they don't have that clean paper trail. They have the ability for the machine to vote, And when you say cast, it prints it out, but you never look at it. It gets scanned and sent directly in. And so I have concerns about that system, and we need to fix it. That's a software problem. There are a lot of machines out there in the state, in small counties, that are still of the pure digital variety, and we must replace those.
All of the state's counties elect a county clerk who is responsible for overseeing the county's elections. The exceptions are the state's 4 largest counties, Sedgwick, Johnson, Wyandotte, and Shawnee, where the Secretary of State appoints their election commissioner. Would you support allowing those 4 counties to select their own election commissioner if you were elected?
I would. I think that the problems and confusion the problems and confusion it caused, if you've seen the costs in Shawnee and in Sedgwick, there's been a lot of debate, and of course what's happening in Johnson County right now, I think it leads to some problems. On the other hand, the reason that law was put in place was to avoid allowing partisan politics at the county level pick somebody who is going to juice the elections one way or the other. The Secretary of State's office should not be partisan, should not be biased in one direction or the other, and I will make my effort to remove the partisanship that we've seen from the Secretary of State's office in the past.
Just one more. As you travel the state, explain the language barriers you may be encountering and what you want to do. You've touched on it a little bit, but to help more voters better understand the process, especially some of our minority voters.
Well, I think that having the voter information in Spanish is a first step, and the state already provided this, by the way, on its own forms. You can also get a Spanish version, so this isn't new, but it is new for it to be so easy to use and online. There are several languages in the state that we could support, and I would support the ones where there's a sufficient population that we can afford to produce in that language. And Southwest Kansas has got actually quite a variety of languages where there's a pretty material population in those cases.
Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Mr. McClendon, anything you'd like to say?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for setting this system up. I know you've been doing it for many years. It's my first time here, and I'm very happy to see that Kansans are politically active, and please, let's get the rest of the state to be as active as you are. Thank you very much.